Let's talk about one of the biggest reasons AI projects just completely fall apart. And spoiler alert, it's usually not about the technology. It's about having vague goals. You know, when success is just a feeling, a general sense of good enough. Well, that's when the finish line starts moving. We call it goalpost moving, and it is an absolute project killer.
But here's the good news. The PMI-CPMI framework has a very specific defense against this exact problem. It forces you to get crystal clear right from day one, making you define success with hard numbers. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how you can set these numbers to lock in your project's goals and, of course, help you ace your exam.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the trap of vague goals. Then, we'll jump into the core of this lesson, the two-threshold solution. After that, we'll cover some simple rules to make sure you get it right. Walk through 5 super realistic exam scenarios, and then wrap it all up with a quick recap and a crucial exam tip. Okay, let's get right into it. The single biggest trap is not defining success with numbers right at the beginning. If you don't, you're just setting yourself up for arguments down the line. What's good enough for one stakeholder is a total failure for another. That's the vague goal trap, and we're here to avoid it.
So, what's the solution? It's simple, but powerful. You have to set 2 totally different kinds of success thresholds. Every single AI project needs both a business threshold and a technical threshold. They measure completely different things, and you absolutely must have both. First up is what we call the acceptable KPI performance value. Now, this is your business metric. It's all about the real-world impact. So, for example, a bank's AI might need to maintain a false approval rate below 2%. If it can't hit that number, it doesn't matter how cool the tech is, the project isn't delivering real business value.
The second piece of the puzzle is the acceptable model performance value. This is purely your technical metric. It's all about how well the AI model itself is performing its specific task. For example, a goal might be for the model to achieve 94% accuracy. This is just a raw measurement of the algorithm's skill.
So here's the most important thing to get. The KPI value asks, is this project actually helping the business? While the model value asks, is this algorithm any good at its job? A project can totally succeed at one and completely fail at the other. And that is exactly why you have to define and track both of them.
All right, now that we know what these thresholds are, let's talk about a few dead simple rules for applying this framework. Getting these right will stop your project from failing and, of course, help you nail these questions on the exam.
Rule 1. Use numbers, not vibes. Words like improve or better are useless. Rule 2. Make sure every threshold can be traced directly back to a business objective. If you can't connect it, it's the wrong metric. Rule 3. Decide on business trade-offs early on. Rule 4. Once the thresholds are agreed upon, lock them in. This is how you stop goalpost moving. And finally, Rule 5. Treat things like compliance and trustworthy AI as non-negotiable constraints from the very first day.
Okay, theory is great, but what really makes this click is seeing it in action. So let's walk through 5 common exam scenarios to see exactly how these ideas get tested.
All right, here's a classic scenario for you. The model is a technical success. It hit its accuracy goal, but the business isn't seeing any benefit at all. What's going on here?
The answer is that the problem lies in deployment or user adoption. A perfect model that just sits on a shelf provides exactly 0 business value. The tempting wrong answer here is to blame the model's metrics, but the question clearly tells you the model passed its technical test. The problem is somewhere else.
In our next scenario, we've got stakeholders arguing later in the project. They all agreed on the goal, reduce manufacturing defects, but now they disagree on what that actually means.
The root cause here is that the initial business objective just wasn't clear enough. A well-defined objective would have prevented this argument from ever happening. And don't be tempted to blame the stakeholders. Their disagreement is just a symptom of a weak objective.
Okay, this one tests if you can spot a really well-defined objective. You've got 2 options. One is pretty general, while the other is way more specific and hints that a trade-off has already been thought about. Which one is better?
The better objective, hands down, is to decrease false positive alerts. Why? Because it's specific, it's measurable, and it focuses on a clear business outcome, cutting down on manual work. Reduce fraud losses, on the other hand, is just too vague. It doesn't really guide the project team on what they should prioritize.
All right, let's bring in a factor that's huge in the real world, compliance. In this scenario, a trustworthy AI requirement, explainability, is stated right up front. How does that change things?
The answer is that this requirement acts as a fundamental constraint on the entire project, right from phase I. You can't separate your business goals from compliance. The goal itself has to be achievable within those rules. The single biggest mistake you can make is thinking compliance is something you worry about later.
For our last scenario, you're given two different numbers. Your job is to correctly identify what each number represents within the framework we've been talking about.
Okay, so that 40% reduction, that's your aspirational goal, your target. That's the business success criterion. But that 2% rate, that's the non-negotiable floor. It's the minimum you have to achieve, which makes it the acceptable KPI performance value. This really shows the difference between your target and your absolute must-hit minimum.
All right, let's wrap this all up and boil it down to the most important points you need to lock in for the exam.
Let's quickly recap the 5 biggest takeaways. First, every single project needs 2 thresholds, one for the business KPI and one for the technical model. Second, always use hard numbers, not fuzzy goals. Third, trace every single threshold back to a clear business objective. Fourth, force those tough trade-off decisions to be made in phase 1. And fifth, remember that trustworthy AI requirements are foundational constraints, not optional extras.
And if you need a simple way to remember the difference, here's a great memory hook for you. Think of the KPI value as a gauge on your car's dashboard. It's telling you about the overall health of the business. Then think of the model value as a target. It's just measuring the specific skill of one component.
And finally, here's a huge tip for the exam. If you get a question where stakeholders are conflicting about what to prioritize, remember, your role as the project manager is not to pick a winner. Your job is to facilitate the conversation so that the stakeholders can make a clear decision, allowing you and the project to move forward.